All right, guys, welcome to New Pod. I'm Josh with Toomey. That is Ro Kohli, and we are here to take you down a journey of new metal together, man. Ro, how have you been?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. Busy as hell. Lots of things going on, but this whole sick new world thing is ludicrous. Ludicrous, I tell you.
It's crazy, man, how new metal has kind of just come back into the zeitgeist and just totally taken over. And, you know, there's studies out now, Google saying that new metal is being, searched more and more every day, and some of the highest since, back in the day. So probably since Google started, man. So it's crazy how what we grew up listening to is kind of coming back around again, man.
Yeah, I look at it on a couple of different angles. In one sense, it's nostalgia for people like us, oh man, remember the early 2000s or the mid 90s or whatever. But I find that the people who were kids between like 2000 and 2010, let's say, they were growing up with their parents sort of listening to it. So it's kind of like they weren't old enough to really get into it. So right. I feel like now with parents kind of being like, oh yeah, I love Korn. And then all of a sudden their kids are like, wait, like I love Korn because of my dad likes Korn. And so now like, let me go and see what earlier Korn stuff is. So I think it is, man. Like you said, it's kind of just been reintroduced, like you said, into the zeitgeist. But I think that's kind of probably what it is. It's a lot of people really, trying to seek this stuff out. And I think for metal, especially with new metal, and metal in general, it's, you have your fair weather fans, but I think when people hear a band like Korn or even dig really deeply into a band like, let's just say Sevin Dust or, Cold Chamber, it's like when it comes to metal, these songs aren't played on the radio at all. So I find that people who get into it, stay in it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
What was kind of your introduction to Korn and Deftones and everything back in the day? Like, what was your kind of the gateway into that?
I was doing a zine. I was doing my zine in college called Shock to the System. And that was really kind of what happened. It was because in New Jersey, where I was from, we were heavy into Biohazard and Sick of It All and a lot of that sort of stuff. And, the Roadrunner bands and whatnot, were definitely a big part of that. But we didn't really know what was going on the West Coast for the most part. We had Fear Factory and we're like, oh, Fear Factory's so cool because it was so different than anything that was on the East Coast. But then when I got Korn's first record, I got like an advanced cassette before it had
artwork. Look at you.
Oh yeah, before it had artwork and all these kinds of things. And I just remember listening to it. I just remember Fieldy's bass was just like, I remember it felt like it rattled my rib cage every time I heard it. I was just like, what am I listening to? What is this? Yeah. And then they opened for Biohazard and House of Pain in New York. And it was Korn's first time there. And I was supposed to interview House of Pain. And I'm walking behind a bunch of dudes. And I'm thinking like, oh, these guys must be part of the Biohazard crew. And it was actually Korn I was walking behind. And but I just remember being like, I just remember thinking like, this is so different. It's so different. And it was so visceral. Like, you listen to Daddy or you listen to, Faggot or you listen to any of these songs. It was just like, it was, because like I said, like on the East Coast, like Biohazard and Sick of It All and everything like that was very, stomping and very like, like, don't take shit from anybody, that kind of thing. But with Korn, it was this like, nobody hears us as victims kind of thing, or like, like nobody thinks about this aspect of what people are going through. And I just remember being like, man, this is hard. And then when you listen to Daddy, especially, like, I just remember being like, what is happening right now? Like, some help, man. Like, but at the same time, it also spoke to me on those kinds of levels where you're just like, wow, this is the stuff you can't talk about with your bros, or your friends, because, you're not going to tell them that you were molested or whatever, like this isn't. So this was all the deep, dark stuff that nobody was really talking about at that time. And I just remember then like, you had bands like and then Deftones came out, and, it was even more like, you kind of go, oh, well, it sounds a little bit like Korn, but then you go, but it's not at all. Yeah. And then Cold Chamber, I remember when Cold Chamber came out, I gave it to a buddy of mine and I was like these guys sound like Korn, whatever. And he literally and he was the type of guy who was like, oh, good, like something free, like awesome. And he literally came up to me, he goes, you need to listen to this. And I was like, all right. And then I listened to it. I was like, oh my God, it's again, you could tell because we didn't have the internet back then, you could tell that there was a lot that we just didn't know was going on the West Coast, whereas on the West Coast, everyone was going to see Korn and Cold Chamber selling out the whiskey and all that, but we just had no idea. So for me, I'm like, there's a sound that's coming from that part of the country. And then the more I started doing my zine and getting involved with publicists and all these bands getting signed and everything, it just started to really blossom and really build. And then when I started working at Roadrunner, when I was interning at Roadrunner, that's when, again, Cold Chamber got signed, and that's when it you could feel these floodgates about to break open.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. And then after that, it's like, once you got into the latter part of the 90s, it was just full on craziness. Cause then you just had, you had Primer 55 and you had, Flawed,
right.
all of these, just all these Union Underground, and just kind of everybody it just started to bubble into this crazy thing that became a thing, so that was really kind of how it all started for me. It was sort of like, you're kind of like listening to the water on the other side, and you're like, something's happening on that side. And then slowly but surely the water starts pouring in, and then it just cracks open and you're swallowed up in the deluge, So
yeah, I think the one thing with the new metal was like, this was the first time that this was my music. This wasn't, something that I got into Metallica in 91. But I mean, they had 4 albums out before I got into the Black Album.
Right.
And, Megadeth had so many albums, that was still not necessarily my music, but I remember seeing a photo of Head and Metal Maniacs at like Foundations Forum. And I remember just seeing the picture and thinking like, wow, he had the little, just the little spiky little
asparagus. Yeah.
And I was just like, well, that's different, and the 7-string guitar and the baggy clothes. And a friend of mine drove to a Blockbuster Music that had, they would allow you to listen to CDs, not a listening station, but you could actually physically take them a CD. They would open it. You could listen to it. And so I saw the first Korn album there, and I was just like, I got to check this out. And, I remember hitting play and hearing that ride cymbal and like, something's different here, man. Something's really different. And when it comes to what you said about emotions and things like that, you didn't get a lot of emotion in Megadeth. You didn't get a lot of emotion in, Metallica, in Slayer. It was all about, just punching you in the face. And even,
or just topical stuff, it was like nuclear war and pollution. Right. It was like these things that were sort of way bigger than us, like I can't stop Area 51 from doing alien stuff, like it was,
yeah. So you start hearing that, and then I'm also in high school too, and you're going through those changes, and you're starting to really feel emotions too, and you're like, wow, Korn's talking about emotions, and Deftones talk, there's emotion in metal, and you're getting to have feeling. You're actually allowed to have some feelings, kind of like you're talking. You can't talk to your bros about your feelings, then all of a sudden you're hearing Deftones and shit talking, basically singing to you and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where it definitely started for me. And then I was already playing music at the time. So I was, basically in a Metallica cover band, and we didn't even mean to. That's just all we played. So and then yeah, man, Korn came out, and I was listening to Faith No More and like Biohazard and all that stuff at the same time too. But I think Korn just wrapped all of that stuff into like one nice little package for us.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I mean, they were really the I was going to say linchpin, but that's not really the word I wanted to use. They were sort of like, they were sort of the doorstop in a way. It was like when the door opened, they were the ones that sort of kept it open, and everything else poured in from that, but I remember even listening to it back then. And even that first show with House of Pain and Biohazard, they're playing Chutes and Ladders. And I just remember, it's like, you're talking like a Biohazard crowd and a House of Pain crowd. They're just like, what the hell am I listening to? Ring Around the Rosie. What are you talking about? But you could tell that when they made their fan, because the next like few times after that I saw them, I started seeing people like, because I had a photo pass, so I was taking pictures for the zine, but like you would see suddenly people were getting Korn tattoos and stuff. And that's when I was kind of like, whoa, like this is hitting people on a level that I definitely didn't foresee in that regard, but I mean, like, I started seeing so many Korn tattoos, but also we also had Metal Radio in New Jersey with 89.5 WSOU,
right.
So we had at the very least a conduit for this. It wasn't necessarily like, something you had to discover through whatever tape trading, or, you had to have an older brother who went to,
right.
Santa Barbara College or whatever, like, you didn't have to have that. It was, so it would just be like, hey, here's this new band called Korn, check it out. And, they would play it a bunch of times a day. And so we were able to at least, kind of work our way into it, as opposed to, I mean, like, I think about people like later on in this time period where, when you get to like 2000, 2001, where it was just, you couldn't get away from it. It was just
saturated.
It was so saturated. It was so glutted, so it's like, I think that also kind of played an interesting part in the whole thing. Whereas for people like me, it's like, I remember when Limp Bizkit came out, and, they played Warped Tour, and they were playing the opening for Faith No More, and like their publicity.
I saw that tour. Yeah.
Their PR, the PR company that they had, they were like, Ro, can you please just do a review? Like, nobody's doing reviews. We'll include in our press release and press kits, and we'll use quotes. And I'm like, okay, like that's no problem.
Right.
But I just thought, but it was one of those things where it was, and I remember how many people were just like, oh, that band Korn? Oh yeah, they sound like Rage Against the Machine. And I was like, not really.
Right.
But it was the only thing that people could associate with it, So, but I think, like I said, with having Metal Radio and whatnot back then, and the lack of the internet to be able to really, force feed, like not force feed, but just allow this, super highway of, this information super highway to just, blanket everybody. It's like, we actually had that chance to go, okay, cool. I saw them here. And then I saw them at Coney Island High in New York. And then I saw them open for Marilyn Manson and Danzig. And then, so it's like, in a weird way, back in the mid 90s time, we were able to sort of grow with it, which was kind of a nice thing, as opposed to being part of the floodgates opening and just drowning everybody, so that's one of the things that I'm actually happy about when it comes to the way that I sort of kind of fell into it. It felt a little bit more gradual, but yeah, I think that was really, for me, that was really the thing. It was nice that it was gradual, because when I was working in the industry in late 90s and early 2000s, it was so much everywhere, everything, labels throwing money at everything, like, it was so much of that it felt like, oh my God, like, what is happening right now? But in the beginning, seeing this scene sort of forming and bubbling out and everything was, I thought it was just really cool, because it was just such a different style of music, different style of metal.
Yeah, it was so crazy too at the time, going from seeing Korn in shitty clubs and whatnot, then all of a sudden, Follow the Leader comes out and they're on TRL, and that was the other side of it too. It was like, because it went from like dingy, dirty clubs and daddy and all those kind of emotions. The next thing they're on TRL in between Britney and Christina and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, and then you've got you've got your Korns, you've got your Limp Bizkits and Linkin Park and all that stuff just like blowing up all over the place too. So it was fun to watch kind of the ascension of new metal at the time too. Yeah,
absolutely, and especially when you saw, like, kind of like, for me, it was like Kerrang started to really kind of grab onto it. And then it just, you could just see its evolution sort of happening, which is, it's almost like one of those, what do they call, like a time lapse video, when you see like a flower just like starting at a seed and then just like kind of blossoming. It was kind of like, being able to really watch it kind of grow, which was really cool. But on the flip side of it, watching it become saturated was also a part of it. So,
well, the one thing you brought up too, there was no internet, but there was, I was a big metal magazine guy, Metal Edge, Metal Maniacs, like you said, your Kerrangs, Metal Hammer, all that stuff, Circus, Hit Parade, like all that stuff. And so I would just sit there, I would go to the grocery store, sit in the magazine aisle and just find every, and read and find everything you can. And back then, there was that thing where I saw the photo of Head. I was like, all right, I got to remember this band Korn, and then finally see the CD at the CD store. All right, I'm going to check it out. Now hey, Ro, check out this band. Boom, Spotify.
Here's a link.
It's done. You know, like it's over. But you know, back then, I mean, even with like Chaos AD, like I remember really wanting to check out Sepultura, and I was like, yeah, I got to check out this band Sepultura, and I probably saw them on Headbangers Ball or something. And then I go to the used record store, and they've got a used copy of Chaos AD on cassette, and I'm like, I got to get this. You know,
right?
I brought home, and then you know that's something too. Like, you know, I'm sure we'll get into it on a future episode, but kind of the Chaos AD, you know, influencing Korn, and then Korn influencing Sepultura. You know, you've kind of got your lineage there. But you know, and back to Korn kind of being an amalgamation of everything going on around it. You know, Sepultura was like that too, kind of bringing in those, you know, jungle rhythms and things like that too, man. So it was a fun time to watch everything, and I'm you know, glad I got to be there for it, and I'm glad that, you know, we're kind of in that, you know, we're in that age group now where, you know, we've got a little bit of disposable income. So what are we going to do? We're going to go to the Sick New World, or we're going to go to this festival. We're going to go to that festival. And it's crazy to see, like, I was looking at the Rocklahoma lineup today, and Limp Bizkit is headlining Rocklahoma. You know, like 10 years ago, they would have been laughed off the stage because Rocklahoma is historically, you know, kind of an 80s metal kind of festival with a little bit of new stuff in there now, but now, you know, our bands are kind of those things where even like a band like Incubus is a festival headliner now, which is crazy. You know, it's, you know, well deserved, but crazy.
Right. Like I remember them on the second stage at Ozfest, you know, playing their 20 minutes, you know, hoping they get some fans. And now it's like, nope, now they're playing this huge arena, the stadium. And I'm like,
right. And I think when we get into the Sick New World Festival lineup, I mean, the headliner of the whole thing is System of a Down, which of all of the bands back then, when they came out, I was like, I do not get this at all. Yeah. And then I went and saw them. I saw them open for Fear Factory. It was Fear Factory, System of a Down, Head PE, and Spine Shank.
Wow, like what a great bill.
And a small club, and like, you know, 500 cap, 600 cap club, you know. And I remember seeing System of a Down come out, still not really thinking I liked them, and then after the show, I'm like, I 100% hooked, and like still, you know, just seeing Surge on stage, he kind of had he had the longer hair at the time. He had like some crazy shirt on. I mean, he had like almost like a Charles Manson vibe to him that he could have told me to do anything, and I'd be like, I'm 100% with you.
I'm in. Tell me what to do.
What's our new religion?
Yeah. See, I remember seeing them out here when I was when I lived out here, and I was just everybody was talking about them. System. Oh my God. Every band I talked to was like, you got to see System. And I'm like, okay. And I remember seeing it and just being like, this is incredible. And I have no idea what I'm watching, but all I know is I need more of it. And then I saw their first show in New York during the CMJ convention. And again, WSOU was playing, I think they were playing War or No. It was one of the two. And like just people lost their collective minds, you know. But to me, I was like, that's why when it comes to them, especially being as big as they are and headlining this festival and all that, I'm always just kind of like, it shouldn't have worked. It's like for all intents and purposes, and the style of music, it should not have worked. It shouldn't have worked. It was like circus metal, you know, like
totally,
like almost like polka metal in a weird way. It was just so bizarre that it shouldn't have worked, and the fact that it did is just, it's one of those things that just makes me go, you know, whenever somebody tells me the name of a band, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that's a dumb name, and then I'm like, well, what the fuck do I know?
I listened to a band called
Korn, you know, like with a K. Like, what do I know about stupid band names? Like, whatever, man. Like, let's just do it, you know. But yeah, for me, it's like System in a way never should have worked, and the fact that it did, it was just like they were another, if you will, doorstop band where it's like they just wedged that door open and they kept it open, you know, and it's like they never. You know, they never went backwards. You know, they never faded into obscurity. They never, you know, they didn't do the Limp Bizkit thing where they were kind of, you know, a little bit of a running gag or a joke. Like they were always just System of a Down, and you know, it never stopped. And I was always impressed by that.
Well, I think they did they did the go away, and then everybody craved them more. And then when they do come back,
right?
They didn't do the slug it out in clubs for the last 15 years. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh yeah, we do like like a Glassjaw, great band, love the band, but they're one of those bands that put out a couple of seminal albums, went away, and then every time they come back, they're like, people are like, holy
everybody
fucking
goes
shit,
berserk.
Yeah, that's one, or like even like Refused or something like that. And I was a little off topic, but yeah, Refused put out one classic record, and now everybody's like, "Holy fuck, Refused is playing,"
Right? Or like Rammstein, even like that kind of thing, where it's just like, no, we're only going to play 6 shows in America. Okay, great. They're going to be playing friggin' Giant Stadium for 4 nights, and you're like, wait, what? How did that happen?
Yeah. Like didn't Rammstein open for Soulfly last time they were here?
Right.
Well, let's dive into this Sick New World lineup here, and we'll kind of grab a few things out of this. And this is, like I said, I was texting with you earlier. This is kind of a get to know the host kind of episode, and just kind of talking about our history in nu metal and things like that. And we'll talk some stuff, but. Over the next however long we do this show, man, album, we'll take some deep dives into albums, bring on guests that were on the albums or produced the albums or mixed the albums. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I'm looking forward to taking a deep dive into nu metal with you, bro.
Yeah, me too, dude. I think it's just really cool because for people like us, nu metal started off as this weird movement, blew up into this, kind of saturated thing, sort of became a joke. Like a punchline, like, oh, you're a nu metal band, blah, 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 but then, and now it's sort of, it's okay now, it's okay to like the Deftones. It's okay, or Deftones, excuse me. It's okay to like Korn. It's okay to do these things or be into these bands now, and I think that's the beauty of it for people like us and our generation, if you will, just to be able to see sort of the rise, the fall, and then sort of the rise again of this genre that we were all a part of in whatever intimate ways we were, whether you were working at a record label like I was, whether you were in a band like you were, we all sort of have such a interesting, weird perspective of it. Cause like, I could never know what it was like. I mean, I've toured before with bands, but like I've never played on stage. I've never done the van thing. I've never, but you did that. But then on the flip side, I was dealing with the street teamers, and I was dealing with all, so I was dealing with that other side of it. So it's like, that's what I like about this conversation, is that we kind of come at it from 2 very distinctly different, but same points of view in a weird way, So
totally
I think that's the best part about this.
As of when this will come out, this will be next Saturday, May 13th at the Las Vegas Festival Grounds. Sick New World. That's going to be this show. As soon as whenever this came out, I was like, you got to be. I thought it was a joke. Like it looks like a joke.
I thought it was as well. It looked like one of those wannabe like when they put like those fake festival lineups, on Facebook or whatever, where it's like, your mother's band and your dad's band and your brother's band, like just those stupid kind of almost like festival AI generator kind of things. I was like, this is not a show. This is just silly. And whoever's doing this is dumb. And then when it turned into a reality, it was like one of those like wiping my eyes, like, are we really, we're doing this? So,
well, it's funny because when this came out, after what was the emo one called?
When We Were Young.
Yeah, When We Were Young, and there was a joke When We Were New poster that came out was very similar to this one. So I thought, again, it almost seemed like a joke. The one marketing thing they did mess up on is they should have said Sick New World in U World, but we'll let them slide on that. Well, let's just kind of go from the bottom to the top here, because we'll go. I'll just name off some of these at the bottom. If you know anything about them, then you can jump in. But if not, we'll just keep going. Panchico, Scene Queen. Scene Queen, since this has come out, she's been on Knotfest on a few shows. She's definitely got a TikTok following, things like that. She seems to be kind of fun, but it's still kind of a jokey thing. So I'm, as you will learn, I'm not a big fan of joke bands.
I'm right there with you, and unless it's something like a SOD kind of thing,
That's cool.
but no, I'm kind of the same way. It's because in a way I almost look at some of these kind of jokey kind of bands as like, I don't know, in a weird way I almost feel like it's insulting. Yeah, because it's like don't take something I love and be like, ha ha ha, now I'm a big clown. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not okay. But I am, just the same though, I am interested in checking out some of the bands that I don't know on this list, you know, because it does make me realize like, okay, I also, as much as I love this and I love the genre and all these, and, you know, have all these experiences with however many of these bands, it's like, I never also want to be like, back in my day, it was so, you know, it's like, no, there's still new stuff to experience. There's still new heaviness to get into, you know, that's why I like that there's a Spirit Box on here and that there's, you know, there's a Turnstile on here. Like that to me is the really good part of it are those kind of, you know, sort of connective tissue kind of bands, you know, between the older generation like us and this newer generation of bands.
Yeah. Super Heaven, Fiddlehead. I know you're a big fan of Fiddlehead, and Narrowhead. A lot of headbands. Scowl, another.
But no head PE. Go figure.
Right. Yeah, they'll be on the next Sig New World 2. Yeah. Scowl, another band that's been doing some stuff here on Knotfest. Orgy, that's the first of the classics there. I think that, you know, that's obviously well deserved on this list.
Yeah. I saw them not too long ago. They played at the Rainbow Bar and Grill in their little parking lot. They do like these parking lot bashes, and they still sound great. You know, Jay Gordon still sounds good. Everybody, you could tell everybody went through their drug phase and everything like that. And everybody looks like, we can't really keep the drug alcohol thing going like we used to, you know? So it's like, you could feel that there's, you know, when you kind of get over that hump of it, that there's a new kind of vitality to it, which makes it sound nice and fresh again, you know?
Yeah. They were always one that back in the day that they were definitely, that's one thing you can't do is you can't say new metal sounds like this, you know, because Orgy was new metal, Korn was new metal, Deftones is new metal, you know, there was, you know, Soulfly, you know, there's so many like iterations of what new metal sounds like, but yeah, they were definitely like the Depeche Mode new metal.
Right. That's a great way to put it. They were Depeche metal.
Depeche metal. Monster Magnet.
So Monster Magnet is literally one of my top 10 all-time favorite bands.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Like I've been listening to them since I was since 1990 when Spine of God came out. Okay. And I've loved them ever since. And I keep telling myself I need to get a Monster Magnet tattoo because I absolutely love. There like there's a bunch of their records where I'm just like that's my desert island record kind of thing. So for Monster Magnet, they're one of those bands I will travel for.
Wow. Okay.
I will follow them up and down the West Coast if I can.
Right.
I just love that band so much. So the fact that they're on here and I'm praying they don't cancel is a huge deal for me. But again, Power Trip came out during that new metal era, but this is a head scratcher one. Yeah, that I mean, again, like a welcome addition in my opinion, but at the same time, I'm like, but yeah, okay, but yeah, they don't really fit in the new metal-y category like some of these other bands. But same thing goes for the next band on the list, you know.
Yeah, my life with the Thrill Kill Cult. Actually one band I don't know a lot about. I know that I should, but I don't. Good. Yeah.
A great song is After the Flesh on the First Crow soundtrack. Amazing song, and they're just one of those bands where it's just that heavy, dirty dance metal.
Yeah.
You know, almost Lords of Acid-y kind of vibe. But I'm excited for that too. If I can get into the show, I'm excited to make them part of my list of bands I really want to check out.
It's funny going back to Monster Magnet real quick. I was thinking that the first time I ever heard Monster Magnet was, you know, we were talking about, you know, pre-internet and we're listening and we're reading magazines. But the other thing was like Metal Shop, you know, back when Metal Shop was on the radio, like the syndicated metal show. And I can distinctly remember Monster Magnet being on Metal Shop because, I would record Headbangers Ball. I would tape Metal Shop off the radio and just listen over and over just because I couldn't get enough of the music back then. But yeah, Monster Magnet was definitely a Metal Shop staple.
Well, and Monster Magnet is still very, especially, I mean, you know, during this era of the late 90s, you know, they were doing Power Trip and Monolithic and you know, these more rock records, but you know, they were very much this kind of psychedelia, stoner metal kind of thing, you know, like you would talk about them in the same breath that you would say Caius or Queens of the Stone Age, you know, so that's why I'm like, you know, for me, I'm kind of like, it is a bit of a head scratcher, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, hey, you know, I'm game for sure.
Right. Then we have Loathe, and then we have Cold, and Cold is kind of I love Cold. I don't know your thoughts on Cold,
I was never a Cold fan, but mostly because what's the dude's name? Scooter,
yeah.
He was really drunk at the Key Club in Los Angeles one time, and I was like, yo, dude, what's up? And he bit me on the neck so friggin' hard that I almost bled. And after that, I'm like, I can't go and see Cold. Screw that guy. So, you know, even I'm sure their music is great, but like that one incident, like literally was like, yeah, I could do without them.
I was waiting for you to like say you met him at a bar and he was a jerk, not he bit you on the neck.
He literally, dude, he clamped on my neck so friggin' hard. He like, it wasn't that he broke the skin, but he left a teeth bruise on my neck. And I just remember it hurt for like 2 weeks. And I was just like, fuck that band.
And if, you know, the girlfriend at the time, I'm sure you're like, no, seriously, it was the singer of Cold.
Oh, no, she was there with me. She was there when it happened. And she was like, what the hell was that? And I'm like, she's like, do you know him? I'm like, I mean, like, I know him, you know, in a passing kind of way. That's why I said, hey, and what's up? But like, I was just expecting a hug, not a friggin' lamprey to friggin' latch onto my friggin' neck, you know? So, that's my thing about Cold.
So my pre-Primer 55 band, 12 Volt Negative Earth, which will come up a lot in this because we did play with a lot of these bands. But one of our first big shows we ever did, we opened for Limp Bizkit, and the other band on the bill was Cold. So it was Limp Bizkit, Cold, and us, and that was the first time I ever saw them. And that was definitely a fun evening. And you know, and Scooter actually is one of my favorite interviews I've ever had on Talk to Me. Like when he came on the show, like, you know, he was very warm and he didn't bite me, and you know, he was super, just
thankfully
he was super thankful that I think that, you know, I was just knowledgeable of his band. Yeah, I could tell he appreciated that I actually knew what I was talking about with him.
I'm sure if I went up to him and told him that story, he would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I mean, like, you could, he was definitely in that blackout drunk kind of thing. And it was just one of those things where every time somebody mentioned it, it was almost like you feel like phantom pain come back. And I was just like, you know what? But all things considered, in a situation like this, if I saw them live and they, you know, I would love for their music to turn that whole situation around for me. You know, I would love to be like, damn, this is good. Damn, I'm stupid for letting that affect how I listen to their music, but better late than never kind of thing, you know?
All right. And up next, Cradle of Filth.
Weird addition to the band as well, or to the list.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's the thing about this poster too, is the bands on like the second and third line typically are bands you've never heard of. They're opening the tour for the bigger bands and things like that. But like just so far down on the list, you've got Cradle of Filth, you've got Body Count, you know, coming up, Birthday Massacre, and 69 Eyes. I mean, this third line alone is a massive show.
Right. No, that's exactly it. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like you said, like usually the last three lines are just bands that you're kind of like, okay, it must be just local yokels kind of thing. Right. But yeah, when you're talking Orgy and Monster Man, I mean, these are bands with gold records, you know, like, you know, but Cradle's an interesting thing. I remember when Cradle played during the daytime at Ozfest, and I'm curious how they're going to do it. I hope they don't try to do their club show outside, because, you know, you can't really, I don't know. I find that's with black metal. Yeah. That's really a tough thing to pull off. I remember when Demu played Ozfest too. I just remember being like, I don't know how the hell you guys are going to do this. Like,
right.
You guys don't exist in the sunshine, you know, that's weird. But I mean, I always hope that a band like that is going to, kind of, what's the term I'm looking for? Not manipulate, but like, sort of position their show for that environment, if you will. And I don't know how they would do that, but I always hope that they will. So I'm curious to see kind of like what they do, if it'll just be like their club show, but outside, or if they'll actually, kind of make it in such a way where it almost feels like a inside dark club show outside.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
And then obviously next on the bill, Body Count. Like I think Body Count have been putting out some of their best music in the last 5-6 years.
Who's after? Oh, my list is different than the one you have.
Oh.
My list has something called Louder After Midnight, or London. I can't really read it. Something After Midnight. Maybe you have a more update. I mean, this is the one I grabbed it from.
I see London After Midnight.
Oh, London After Midnight. Yeah, they're the ones who are next on my list. So yeah, I just grabbed mine off of the website. So I got London After Midnight, and then weird. Yeah, so they switched the spot with Body Count on my list. But okay, yeah, London After Midnight. Or actually Body Count if you'd like.
Yeah, we'll do Body Count.
Yeah, go for a Body Count. I mean,
no, I was just saying like the last few records from Body Count. I was honestly never a big fan of Body Count back in the 90s. I thought it was, it was cool and all, but it never sounded good. But like the last 3 Body Count records that Will Putney has done have been just amazing. So I'm this era of Body Count has been pretty awesome. I saw Body Count at Louder Than Life last year, and hell of a show. Just the whole thing was amazing. Like they looked great, sounded great. So yeah, perfect addition for this.
I definitely agree, and I think I mean, especially when you think about just the West Coast, like we were talking about the West Coast scene when System and a lot of these bands were coming up. I mean, Ice-T and Body Count were such an inspiration to those bands, So if anything, I they absolutely belong on this, because I know that they inspired Korn.
Oh yeah.
Ice-T alone has inspired so many of these bands. So I think they're definitely a really good addition to this, and his band now, like the guys in Body Count now, are just phenomenal. Oh, yeah. Last time I saw them was it Knotfest, Ozfest, or one of the Knotfests, I think, and I just remember being like, wow, like these guys, they just sounded so tight and so good. And I was just like, man, this blew me away. So I'm all about it.
And then Birthday Massacre, another band I'm not too familiar with.
A buddy of mine tried to get me into them, but I never got to see them. So I'm very curious about it. I know they're kind of a little gothier from what I understand. Right. I could be wrong. Typo negative right. kind of vibe, as far as I know. But definitely one I'd like to check out.
The 69 Eyes, I know that's more of a legacy act kind of deal. Yeah, but again, not something I've been into.
Yeah, them I don't know that well either, so I can't really. I would not want to say anything about it, because I'm just kind of like, I don't know much about them.
Right. Filter, obviously, some hits there.
Yeah, for sure, and also an interesting addition to this show, but
They're like fringe of that era, because like the only time I ever saw Filter, they were opening for White Zombie. So it was kind of it was like the first album, their first album tour with, I think White Zombie was probably an Astro Creep at the time. Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, fun live band, but yeah, they kind of like that. They're like that pop industrial side of the thing,
and when I think about that, and I think about the term like Sick New World as far as like a title for a thing, I that's where I kind of go like, where are we, like, at least when we were young, like that made sense. You have My Chemical Romance and like blah 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 blah, you had all these sort of bands, but like that's why I'm like, Sick New World, like I mean, sick, sure. World, I get. New, like that's right. So if they had done NU with the umlauts, then maybe that would make some sense. But like, I just kind of go like, okay, like the name of the festival versus some of the bands, I just go like, that's the head scratcher part for me. But hey, you know what? I mean, Filter's still a legit band, like you said, bunch of singles, bunch of hits. And stuff people know like the back of their hand. And I think that's really that's the legacy part of the whole thing,
What's crazy, that's a band that seems to be very low on this list too. If you're going to go on hits and things like that, like they could have easily been way higher on the list, and it would have been like, yeah, I get it.
Right. You know, especially on the next line, like you have a band called Prayers, and I'm like, okay, like them, I have no idea what we're talking about.
Lacuna Coil is another band that I like.
My favorite people in the world.
All right, go ahead.
My favorite. Oh, I love Lacuna Coil. Like when I worked at Century Media, they were just wonderful people. I got to tour with them on Ozfest, and to this day, they still treat me like family, and I love them to death. I just did a ton of Lacuna Coil merch, which I'm really stoked about. I make all their laminates. I've made these basketball jerseys for them. Hopefully, we'll be doing some custom Funko Pops, hopefully, for them. Okay. But I love that band. They're just the sweetest bunch of people, and then when you watch them on, like, that's what I loved about them, is that when I was on their bus, even if there was drama, if there was something going on, they all knew what they had to do. Like, they never brought that drama on stage. It was like when they got on stage, they knew what they had to do. They knew what their job was. And just to watch their camaraderie and everything, it was so, I don't know, man. There was a very refreshing part of it. And there's also an innocence to them in a weird way that I love. You know, okay. I love watching them interact with the fans. I love, like, they're just like, it's just like watching your best friends be in a band and watching people go crazy over them. And you get to just like kind of stand there and just smile the whole time. And I love their music. So those guys for me can do no wrong. I actually just had lunch with Andrea, the singer, one of the singers, nice. A couple of days ago, you know, so
how's the bragging camp going?
Yeah. Brag, bro. But I mean, that's kind of it. It's like the fact that they, you know, anytime I get to make merch for a band that I love, I look at it not like, right on, man, of course that's going to happen. I know them, you know. Yeah. I'm always grateful and, you know, for how fortunate I am to be able to still carry that, you know, for a band that I worked with so many years ago, to still be like, you know what, we're going to trust Ro to do this, you know, that's something that makes me feel really good. And so it's like with those guys, like I said, it's, you know, they're the type of band I will bend over backwards for and do whatever I can for. And so to see them on this list is just, it's refreshing for me. So I'm really happy for them. I love those guys and girl.
Awesome. The next band, the Melvins, are a band that I kind of funny to be on this list because they seem to be so probably anti-nu metal than it's crazy. But right. Actually, back in the day, one of my favorite bands growing up, you know, back when I was listening to all this stuff. I mean, and another band I actually saw open for White Zombie was White Zombie, the Reverend Horton Heat, and Melvins. So wow. that would have been a fun gig too, man. But I've seen the Melvins a few times. Great band, love them, love Houdini. Yeah, you know, just I would love to see them at this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how they are now. I haven't seen them in years and years. I think the last time I saw them, they opened for Primus eons ago. Yeah. But it's cool though, because King Buzzo always goes to like comic conventions in LA. So it's like it's so hard to miss him in the crowd, you know. Yeah, right. But he's still really cool. He takes pictures with everybody, and he's just really nice. So again, it's one of those situations where it's like you can like just that's one of those like legacy bands where you just want to be like, man, those guys have been through a lot,
right?
You know, and to see them still cranking it out, I'm like, fucking rock on, man.
Failure on the list, good band.
Yeah, good band. I saw them with Tool a million years ago. But their music never stuck with me in the same way that like, you know, a band like Lacuna or whatever, you know, like, so they're another band that I'd like to see again and you know, kind of watch with more experienced eyes, if you will, you know, and more experienced ears, you know, and either go like, oh, I see why people like them so much, you know, like that's what I'm always looking for when it comes to a Melvins or Cold or something like that, where it's like I'm hoping that with having a little bit more experience in the industry and listening to bands that, you know, I can walk away and be like, all right, I get it.
Right. You know? Stabbing Westward up next. That's another band that you know were obviously big at the time, and then the singer dies, and then they come back with a new singer and whatnot, and so you know you've got. I dug the couple of the tracks they put out back in the 90s, but
yeah, for sure.
I don't know much about what they've been up to lately.
Yeah, I put them in the same similar category as Filter in that regard. Yeah. You know, where like it's been a long time and you know, with the new singer and everything, it's like, okay, does it have the same vibe, or what?
Their singer had such a distinct voice too. Like that
Right.
was him. Like that, you couldn't just mistake him for anybody else. So I would be curious to hear the new guy.
Yeah, and it also had that electronica aspect to the music as well, just like Filter did, which again, like some of the bands that are on here, My Life with the Thrill Cult, Ministry, Skinny Puppy, like it's kind of still part of that sort of dancey metal kind of vibe. So I'm definitely curious and would love to check those guys out for sure.
Right. Now we're at the part of my list with London After Midnight. No idea who that is.
Me neither. not a clue.
Yeah, Fever 333. A band that I know that they've been doing a lot of things. I think they're down to just one original member already.
Yeah,
and so we'll see what they're going with.
Didn't they do the Knotfest we were at?
I do not believe so.
I'm trying to remember which because that was the one with the crazy lead singer, right?
Yeah,
where he just kind of goes nuts on stage.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and
because he's got that other band that I saw. What the hell are they called? Shit. Oh God, I saw them open for Glassjaw actually a couple months back. Oh, I have the vinyl upstairs. I can't. I'm brain farting on it, but I just remember I saw them with like on the Knotfest.
Yeah. Right okay. Yeah. It was they were there? Yeah.
They were there, right? Okay. Because I saw them after the Des Moines show. I saw the first Knotfest show when it was Knotfest, Killswitch, and them. And I was so blown away by him because the dude was all over the place. It was crazy, and he was incredible to watch.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
They're amazing.
I know you're a big fan of the band Health. I don't know much about them.
That's a no for me.
I can't read that logo. Who is that?
Good. That's not just me either. Okay, I can't read it either. So let's see if I can.
What is that? It's like machine.
It looked like it said machine gun something, but let me see if I can blow it up a little bit here. Lacuna, there we go. Let's see. Machine Girl, it looks like.
Okay. Yeah. Don't know anything about Machine Girl.
Nope. And I hope that's the right name. It seems like it.
Right. Honestly, don't know much about Horror or Prayers. So
no, those are two new ones for me as well. Can't really talk much about it.
Now the next line we're going to be on for a little bit, but
good Christ.
If you're going to do a new metal podcast, you definitely got to talk some Soulfly, man. Obviously being such a huge fan of Sepultura growing up, and then when Max left Sepultura, and then Soulfly pops up, and then that was such a massive. That first record was so massive, and honestly, he really hasn't in Soulfly put out a garbage record from what I can tell. Like everything seems to be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, Soulfly was such a huge part of my life. Yeah. First time I ever toured was with them. And watching them literally every day, and then really connecting with those guys. And I was out there with Mikey Doling when he was with them. So it was just it was with those guys. It's they're I feel like even though it was like I toured with them in 2000, it's like I feel like they are such a part of my DNA now because of all the experiences I had with them and touring and all of that sort of stuff. So it's like that band is there's been so many, so much drama and iterations and all that. I mean, Mark Rizzo and all these kinds of things, but the fact that, Roy Mayorga, and I mean, just all the people who have been in this band in one way, shape, or form and everything. And I mean, Max is one of those dudes who just will never stop. He will never, ever stop. I mean, between Kill or Be Killed, Soulfly, Cavalera Conspiracy, Nail Bomb. I mean, like, the dude's like, he's just like, nope, never stopping, never going to quit. And I think for me, even if you don't like Soulfly or you think it's new metal and, as an insult term for them, especially during Primitive, which is the tour that I was on, it's like, you can never just you can never deny Max's power. You can never deny what he brings to the table with metal and everything, you know. So you know, whenever I do watch them, I mean, last time I got to see him, Dino was playing guitar for them, so it was really cool.
I saw that tour.
Yeah, it was cool to see Dino and Max. Just, I mean, I've seen them play together before, you know, like, you know, he'll come out and do Eye for an Eye or something like that, but to see them both just on the stage, just playing all these songs and everything was really, you know, that's one of those legacy bands also where it's, you know, I love seeing them. I'll see them all the time, anytime I can, you know. So good for those guys.
I've interviewed Max, I think 6 times on Talk to Me, and it never gets old. Like it's, right. You know, no matter what. And now in the last few years where it's been more video podcast, where, like, you know, he pops up on the screen, and you know, no matter how many times I've seen him, I'm just like, this fucking Max Cavalera, you know?
Right.
You know? And you know, and obviously with Bobby being in Soulfly for a while, I mean, I've heard some stories, and we're not going to get into those, but I'm just saying, like, there's still like a mystique to him that you know, no matter what, I will still, like, oh my fucking God, it's the guy from Chaos ED and Rise and Roots,
right? And Roots,
you
right?
know, all that shit, man. And but yeah, I was, so when Primer ended our tour in 2002, in 2003, Bobby and I started a new band, and we were, you know, demoing and things like that, and started to play shows. And then I was there, like, the day that Bobby Burns gets the email, and is like, hey, would you like to, you know, we need a bass player. Can you come play bass for us? And he's like, looked at me, and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do I think? It's Soulfly, go do it, you know?
Right.
Like I had uprooted my life.
In your mind?
Yeah, I had uprooted my life and moved, you know, to another town and everything else, and I was like, dude, it's Soulfly, dude, you gotta go. Like, you know, yeah. I think he did 4 records with them, but yeah. So, but
well, I didn't realize he was on that many records.
Yeah. It's
wow. I thought he was only on like 1 or 2, but 4 records. That's awesome. Good for him.
Yeah, good times. POD, man, another fucking. POD is like the only band, and I've in a joking way, the only band that capitalized on 9/11. You know, like you know, when that happened, you know, I was 22 when 9/11 happened. I thought I was going to get drafted into a war. No idea what was going on, but that, a lot, you know, Alive and Youth of the Nation and everything else, man, like, came out at a perfect time when we needed, like, positive, kind of heavy stuff at the time, and they definitely were there for us in that period, during that period.
Yeah, I mean, that's POD was one of those bands I couldn't get into. Unfortunately, it just it felt too generic to me, you know, a little too plotting, a little too I don't know. There was just something about it. There was one of those bands that didn't click for me, unfortunately.
Really?
Nice bunch of dudes. I met them a few times, and they were always super cool. But yeah, it was just one of those bands I just couldn't. I couldn't grasp. I couldn't. It just didn't. It never stuck. You know.
They were one of the few bands that had the kind of Christian label that clicked with me. Like, typically, if you had any of that we're a Christian metal band, or we're a Christian new metal band, or we're a Christian anything, I was just like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And they were one that kind of I looked past. I gave them the okay.
You gave them the pass on that one.
Right. Now, Sevin Dust is probably one band that should be
okay. So we're switching around then a little bit. All right.
Are we? You got a different list?
Yeah. So I got.
All right. All right. Well, I've got Sevin Dust. So.
Sevin Dust is fine. We'll go with your list.
Yeah. You know, that's one band that, you know, earlier we're talking about System of a Down kind of going away and then coming back, and everybody loved them. You know,
right.
Like, Sevin Dust is one of those bands that just trudged through the entire time, and
really, they did.
You know, basically start to finish. I mean, they had a little bit of a period in there with a lineup change, but I mean, you know, the current band and the original band are the same band, and not a lot of bands on this list can say that.
Right.
And so, and Lejean's voice is amazing. Fucking
I mean, same thing. Nicest bunch of dudes.
Oh, you know? Incredible dudes.
Funny story, actually. So I interviewed Morgan one time, and I was like, "Oh, so you're from?" Because they're an Atlanta band, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, they were from Atlanta. Yeah,
right. And he's like, well, actually, I spent the first part of my life in New Jersey, and I'm from this little tiny town. And I'm like, oh, really? What town is it? He's like, oh, it's this town you've never heard of. I'm like, I'm from Jersey. And he's like, oh yeah, it's Metuchen. And I'm like, that's my hometown. I'm like, and he went to the elementary school, just like there were 3 elementary schools in my town, and he went to the other one that I wasn't at. Otherwise, we probably would have been in like the same first or second grade together. But yeah, it was just a really weird thing. I mean, because the term Metuchen, New Jersey doesn't really roll off of anybody's tongue ever. So like hearing him say that, I was like, what, really? But I mean, and you know what? One of the things with them too, like even if there's bands I don't like, I don't care for, like, you know, whatever, Creed or you know, Alter Bridge or one of these kinds of bands that I'm like, you know, it's whatever. You know, I love the fact that those guys have built themselves up from, you know, playing these metal shows and to like kind of crossing over into being able to play, and to being able to play those shows with those kinds of bands. I'm always stoked about stuff like that when even if it's a band, like I said, even if they're opening for Alter Bridge, who I don't particularly care for, I love it when a band can get on a bill like that and still turn everybody around or still appeal to that audience, you know, and they're one of those bands that have really transcended that kind of situation, which I've always, and they're like one of those like hardest working bands in rock kind of thing, you know, like they just never stop. I saw Sevin Dust play in Asbury Park one time, and Lejean had no voice. His voice was shot. And he still did the show like as best he could. But the best part of that was that the crowd sung the songs for him. Like it was that kind of energy where you're just like, you know, and you could see him on stage just being like, you know, you could tell he was just like, I'm going to do this and it's going to hurt and it's going to sound like shit, but I'm just going to do it. And when the crowd was just singing and everything, it was just really like, it was almost like uplifting, you know, and that's one of those bands. They're just a really uplifting kind of band, and I really, really dig them. But I have a story about them for another time.
Right? Really? Yeah, my quick one was mid '90s, where you know, Lejean is originally from Nashville, like grew up there before they went to Atlanta, and then you know, his grandparents and everything, I guess, were also in Atlanta or in Nashville. So I'm side of the stage watching Sevin Dust and with Lejean's like grandmother and cousins and stuff, and she was so proud of Lejean. Like the whole set, she's like, "That's my grandbaby," and just real animated and like a grandma would be. And it was the most fun I've ever had watching a show like side stage was with Lejean's.
It's almost like you don't even want to watch the band; you want to watch the people's reaction to the band. And when you see those family members that are just so into it, it's like it's such a. I love that feeling. You know, I love just watching that. That is almost better than the show itself in a way.
Right. Next on the list is Hoobastank. You know, this is one band, and I, you know, I might get canceled for this one or whatnot, but I enjoyed Hoobastank back in the day. You know, I thought they were a fun band.
See, I couldn't get into them. They were a little too Incubus-y for me. Yeah. But at the same time, when it comes to any band, to be honest with you, and this is my take on any band, I can never say that any band sucks. You know, because what I know is that music is art, and art affects people in so many ways. And just because, you know, I don't care for Justin Bieber's music doesn't mean that it's not art. It's art that doesn't affect me the way it does somebody else. Right. You know, so I can't say he sucks, his music sucks. Like, no, it just doesn't. It just never clicks with me. And I think, and that's okay. You know, and Hoobastank was one of those bands where it never clicked with me. But I would never, you know, if somebody's wearing a Hoobastank shirt, I wouldn't be like, whatever, douche, you know, like it was never.
I might.
it was never, but it was that was kind of it. It was never a source of like, oh, you like them, you know, like for me, it was just one of those bands where I was like, you like them, like that's fucking rad, like enjoy them, you know, enjoy it and have a great time. But, you know, don't be like, how do you not like them?
I don't think Hoobastank would ever. really doubt there are fans of Hoobastank out there that are like fighting dudes. Like, what do you mean you don't like Hoobastank?
Right.
Crawling in the dark, bro. You know,
right.
coming at you or anything like that.
Dark, bro.
I mean, honestly, the next band on the bill is kind of a Alien Ant Farm is what I've got. I don't know what you've got, but I mean, they're kind of in that Hoobastank thing too. I'm a big Alien Ant Farm fan.
Nice.
And I would say a big Alien Ant Farm fan, as in I really like the one album,
right?
But and you know, they're a much bigger band to me than just the Michael Jackson cover.
Yeah, Smooth Criminal, right?
Yeah, like
a great cover.
Yeah, never. It's still on Sirius XM constantly. Yeah. But like movies and things like that, man, was such a great record.
They were another band that they became part of that flood for me. Yeah. You know, that flood of bands that started to happen around that time, where it was just, I was working at Streetwise, and I was, and it was, everything was just, new metal everywhere, and you're getting pummeled with it on a daily basis. And they were one of those bands that unfortunately kind of fell through the grate for me, but I mean, again, Smooth Criminal is great, and I never want to judge a band based on the cover that they did, but I could always tell that they had something, but considering everything that I was listening to at that time, they ended up on my cutting room floor, if you will.
Right. And in the downtimes of new metal, like I bought that CD, I think at a used record store for 50 cents. So
right.
That's, I was like, oh, 50 cents, you can't beat that.
Right.
But yeah, and one of my favorite interviews I ever did, and someone that I'm like Facebook friends with now, is Ty Zamora, the original bass player. Oh, nice. And he's an incredible bass player. And so just kind of getting to be like, dude, the shit you did on that record, man.
Right.
It's crazy. Next on my list is KMFDM.
Another band that I've seen a million zillion times. Yeah. God knows how many times I've stage dove at those shows. Christ Almighty. Right. But that is something that I like about this lineup, is that it brings in that, like, you could easily be like, oh, what's up, New Metal Fest? But like, when you got Ministry, Skinny Puppy, KMFDM, Killing Joke, Thrill Kill Cult, just these kinds of bands. Like, I like that they're including them in this thing, and it's not like, oh, Ministry's new metal or KMFDM's new metal, and it's not that at all. It's just the fact that it's still such a part of the overall tapestry of this era, know. And I think that's the best part about it. But I mean, Extort is one of my favorite records. I think that's a phenomenal record, and their stuff was just so awesome. And during my industrial phase, when I was really heavy into like Nine Inch Nails and ChemLab and all of these bands, like KMFDM was one of those shows where it was like KMFDM is playing the Limelight. Like, we're there, dude. Like, tickets in hand, and at the Limelight in New York, there was never a barricade with security guards, so stage diving was allowed, like, no problem. But so I was always on stage diving off and everything at their shows. But they were, that was one of those bands where after their show, everybody was just sweaty, drenched, and so stoked and amped by the end of the show. So I think that's going to be a great set, man. I really hope they still have that same energy they did once upon a time. That's why during the pandemic, it was supposed to be Ministry, KMFDM, like Frontline Assembly, like all. Right. And I was like, dude, I am so ready for that tour. And then it fell apart, and due to COVID and everything, so it never happened. So I like I said, I'm really hoping I can go to the show and really just soak it in again. And that's a nostalgia thing where I just want to feel that wave of awesomeness just wash over me.
Yeah, they were definitely I definitely had a few of their cassettes at the time. I mean, that's the one thing, like the whole new metal thing we were talking about earlier too, is you did listen to Nine Inch Nails and Ministry and KMFDM, like that all kind of fit in there too. So it definitely fits on this bill, I think.
For sure.
Up next, Killing Joke.
Killing Joke, I've always dug. I know what a huge influence they are on so many bands. I mean, God, just so many bands, So it's like, that's one of those bands where, even though I was never into them as much as I was Ministry and whatnot, when I watch them, I sit there and I go, I see where that band came from, or I
Right.
see where this band got that from, or I can see where X, Y, and Z evolved into, and I like that because to me it's a really cool. I don't know, like it's almost like listening to the evolution of music, if you will.
Right.
Like you get to hear where, so that's where, whatever Static X or Fear Factory got this kind of whatever it is,
Right.
like that's where they pulled that from, or this is where Sepultura got that from, so and Killing Joke is one of those bands that I can listen to and just kind of soak in the evolution, if you will.
Right. Up next on my list is Spirit Box.
Great band. Like I'm bummed. I missed them the last time they played here, but the last time I did see them, man, I can't remember the girl's name though, the lead singer's name. It's
Courtney.
Thank you. I was so blown away. Oh, I saw them at Aftershock.
Okay.
But they were like, her voice was so awesome and so killer, and just one of those bands I really can't wait to see again.
Yeah, I think they would be a band that I think I would need to see live. I haven't really grasped them on record yet, but I think I think they would be a great band to finally see live.
Yeah, I think when you do see them live, you're going to be like, "Holy shit! Why didn't I see this?"
Like I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're going to do that for you.
Up next is Kitty.
I love Kitty. I have a funny story about Kitty, actually.
All right, bring it.
Yeah, a real quick one. So back in the late 90s, there was this chat room called the Palace Chat, where you could create your own little cartoon avatars and whatnot. And I remember seeing this, avatar walking around. It was Kitty, Kittie. And I was like, oh, hey, well, let's see what's going on with this girl. And so I was just talking. And she was like, yeah, I'm in a band called Kitty with my sister and da-da-da and all these kinds of things. She sent me a link and I checked it out. And I was like, oh, it's like for me, the only all-girl metal band at that point was like L7. And so
right.
I was like, oh, well, this is cool. And she's like, yeah, my name is Morgan. I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm Ro, da-da-da. And that was, I was like, yeah, good luck. I really dig it. I think it's really kind of neat. And then fast forward, I don't know, maybe 8 months later, I was working for a street team company called Band Bitch. And
okay.
Yeah, I know, freaking worst name ever. John Nelson. Why did you have that name? Anyway, but I was doing that, and he comes up to me, the guy who owned it, John, and he's like, hey, you might like this band. And I'm like, Kitty? I'm like, what, really? And I look on the back of Morgan Lander, and I'm like, holy crap, they got signed. That's incredible. And then I don't know. I moved back to Jersey and I'm working at Roadrunner, and I ran into her at Irving Plaza, and I'm like, I don't know if you remember me. I was on the Palace, and she's like, are you Ro? And I'm like, yeah. Oh my God. And then it was just like this crazy thing. Like, I can't even believe you remember me from then. And then I ended up getting to tour with them on Ozfest because I was out with Soulfly. Nice. So me and her and why can't I think of her sister's name? Mercedes. We were just always cool with each other. It was just a great thing. And when I watched a documentary about them recently. Mm-hmm. It's like on Hulu or something like that.
Yeah.
I saw that, and it was just cool to see. To see where they've gone, where they've been, where they're going, and the fact that they are experiencing a sort of renaissance themselves. That's one of those things that it kind of fills my heart with warmth,
right?
Because it's like I got to see them, and then not only that, but they opened for Slipknot on Slipknot's first record, and it was just like, oh, now they're selling like 10,000 records a week, and I'm like, holy crap, like these girls are killing it,
Yeah.
So it's just a really cool. For me, that's just watching them. I get to feel that feeling again, which I really dig.
It's funny, like a band like that, and a band like I was actually thinking about this, like a Silverchair, like the kid bands. Yeah. And like the younger bands, and like I was the same age as those bands, and I think there was a lot of jealousy with those bands that I was just like, why are they getting signed and I'm not, and all this other stuff. So so back in the day, I was kind of a little bit more, I was like, I don't know about this band. I dug the Brackish and things like that back in the day. But Morgan over the years has been on. I've interviewed her 5-6 times, friendly with her on on Instagram. Yeah. Things like that. Actually, that will be one of my first. I reach out to and say, hey, let's do the show. I mean, she's done every show I've done. And that's one band. Like the older I get, the more I appreciate.
Yeah. If you get a chance, listen to Oracle again. That record I put on not too long ago, and I was like, why did I not have this as a permanent thing on my list?
Right.
It's a fucking amazing record.
Yeah.
It's an amazing record.
Have we talked about that Ozfest? I actually jumped on that Ozfest for a little bit for like 4 dates.
Which one? 2000?
Yeah. I was because they were doing the carnival stuff with all the promos.
Oh yeah.
And for like $5 you could throw a dart and get a promo pack or whatever.
Right.
And I saw a like now hiring sign at the Ozfest in St. Louis. And I was just like, what's that about? And they're like, oh yeah, well, this is what we do. You get paid this, you get to do that, right? I'm like, fuck it, I'll go with you. And I did the next 4 shows up into Houston. And then I did. And then after Houston, I flew home.
Yeah, because Houston was 197,000 degrees.
Well, it was the deal was it was Houston, and then the next show was like in Seattle.
Yeah, that was the next one was the Gorge.
So they were taking a few days off. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, I'll catch you guys later. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, man. Seeing Pantera every day, seeing fucking knowing it was time to tear everything down when Mr. Crowley started. And shit like that, it was a fun time, man. Did you go to the Pantera after party at the clubhouse?
No. So because I wasn't drinking at the time, I didn't drink at all. And I was always because I was working for Roadrunner and everything like that, I was always so nervous to sort of get involved with those guys because I just never knew what was going to happen. Right. I always felt like I was going to be the guy who was for some reason passed out in a corner, missing my bus call. I played that tour as safe as I possibly could. I do remember when we were in Dallas, though, I was doing laundry and all these, and mind you, I was not covered in tattoos. I had maybe like 4 or 5 tattoos, and everyone kept asking me when I got out of jail. And I was like, what, really? I was like, really? Like, I'm on tour with like Tommy Lee right now. And this is what you think is jail? I was like, damn. But yeah, I know so many people that went to that thing and it was so crazy, but I was just, I was terrified of doing something wrong or getting stuck somewhere and fucking up my whole thing. So I was always I was overly cautious on that tour for sure.
Yeah, I was probably the one person that was at that clubhouse thing that should not have been there. Like, there was no reason for me to be there. I was like part of the fucking carnival crew.
Right.
And, I snuck my way into it and fucking, that was crazy, man. Like Dime and Vinny were jamming Van Halen tunes on stage with the, strippers running around. And at one point Dime was walking around with a tray of shots and handing them out to everybody. And here I am like talking to David Draymond about something stupid, just stupid. It was a banana night, man.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah. But I was like, I was just so terrified. But I remember Houston was God, what was it? 127 degrees.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And it was on blacktop. And I'll never forget this. So I was, on stage with Soulfly before they went on, and I was throwing out the cassette samplers to everybody. That was basically my job, and meeting up with the street teamers and all that. And I remember they had the hoses they were spraying into the crowd, and the water would go about 1.5 feet and then just turn to steam.
Nice.
And you just saw all these. I saw a kid who was running because I think Static X played right before us, and he was running from the main stage to the Soulfly to the second stage, and the kid just dropped. Like, he just dropped, like it was just like sunstroke or whatever, but I just remember seeing that and just being like, holy shit. And then the crowd was so jam-packed for Soulfly, you could tell that there were kids who were passed out in the crowd but were just held up by the crowd. Right. It was like, that was one of those shows where I was like, what in the hell is happening right now? I'd never felt heat like that ever in my life, and the fact that it was on blacktop on a racetrack just made it. And then we saw, me and my friend, because I was helping her at her booth too, we saw like all these black metal kids walking around with like leather trench coats and corpse paint, and I'm like, how are you people even doing this? But yeah, Houston was I was happy after that show was over.
Yeah, that was Dimebag's birthday, and he came out with a crown on and everything else.
Yeah.
But that was.
I remember Pantera in Dallas. I know this is kind of a side thing, but like seeing Pantera in Dallas was such a huge deal.
Oh yeah.
But I just remember this dude with one of those huge foam cowboy hats. And all I was doing was just trying to get the catering. I'd seen Pantera a million times, but I was just like, I need to get some food. And he just grabbed me by the shoulders, screamed, Pantera, and just threw me. And I was just like, what is happening? But yeah, that was those days with that tour was so freaking nuts. That's why the whole Soulfly thing is such a huge part of my life, because the experiences we had on that tour were just so nuts. Sorry, I digress.
No, that was like one of the first times I was around the Primer 55 guys, and I remember being at breakfast one morning, and like Jason walks in, the singer of Primer walks in, and like boogers in his eyes, and he's like wiping them out, eating a bowl of cereal, and they were like the 9 a.m. band or whatever that day,
right?
Just like coming out crazy. But yeah, that was one of the first times I met those guys was at the Ozfest there. Next on my list is it Vile or Vili?
Ville
Valo. Yeah, obviously a him fan. That's awesome that he's kind of coming back around again. I was actually supposed to interview him for his new record, so I listened to his new solo album like 5 times in a row, and then the interview fell through. But
bummer.
That's a band that I dig. Obviously the Hardergram and everything else like that took over.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're definitely a logo band.
Who huge him fans is Killswitch Engage.
Huh.
Those guys love. I think Joel and Mike. I know Joel for sure has a Hardergram tattoo on his finger.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, those guys were really big him fans. I love Razorblade Romance. I think that's a phenomenal record. His cover of the Chris Isaak song is so amazing. I saw them live a bunch of times. I've never seen somebody smoke so many fucking cigarettes on stage before than him. That was crazy. And then I worked with him on the Roadrunner United show that they did in New York.
Okay.
And I was kind of the artist wrangler and everything like that. And he was just so, because I was ready for Diva, take me to my trailer kind of, and he was just like, no, just tell me where to go, man. Just tell me what to do, and I'll take care of it. And I was like, okay, but he was a super sweetheart of a guy, and I had no problems with him. I know he got hammered at that fucking show, but every time I had to deal with him, make sure he was on stage, make sure he knew where he needed to be. He was just polite and respectful, and especially with all those people kind of wandering around from Glenn Benton, from Deicide, and all these people, and he was just a consummate professional, just like, yeah, just let me know what to do, and I'll take care of it. And I was like, fuck. So to see him on this list also is pretty big, and I'm sure that a lot of the bands that are on this bill are going to be watching his show.
Oh yeah. 100 Gex. I don't know if I know 100 Gex.
I didn't even know if I was reading that right when I first saw it, because at first I thought it said 100 CECs, and I'm like, no, I think that's a G. So I don't know anything about 100 Gex, like not a clue.
On this Skinny Puppy, obviously
classic industrial. Like again, one of those influencer bands. Right up there with Killing Joke. But I never got to see Skinny Puppy live, so that would be something I'd be down with for sure.
Coal Chamber.
What can you say?
What can you say that we haven't already said?
Yeah, seriously, that's another band. In my opinion, them and Soulfly, very, very much part of my DNA. I mean, I interviewed Dez on one of their first tours in the States when I was interning at Roadrunner, and those guys have always, same thing, treated me like family, always super cool, always just great. I've seen Dez do some of the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anybody. I remember he was sick one night. I think it was Port Chester, New York. And he took Theraflu and he poured it into vodka and drank it and then like smoked like 2 joints. And I'm like, wow, how are you even doing this, dude? Like, Theraflu enough is going to knock me out. You're pouring it into like vodka was his water, And I'm like, what the fuck? But I've just been with those guys in some way, shape, or form for so many years. And, then Devil Driver, obviously, and all that, and Miguel doing his thing. And, I can't wait to see them again. It'll be cool. Yeah. We saw them a couple years ago when they did that reunion, and Lacuna Coil opened up, and it was great. It's like you just feel that old energy again, which is nice. And same thing, everyone's grown up, everyone's evolved, everyone's had their experiences. So it's like to see them all on the same level again and hopefully enjoying themselves while they're playing like they used to. Like I think that's going to be the, and the songs obviously, but I think that's going to be really like the vibe, the overall vibe is going to be them having a good time on stage, playing these songs, having the crowd go nuts. I think that's going to be an amazing performance, man.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. My last interview that I posted was with Dez, and I went to get a clip, for Knotfest YouTube, and I was like, Dez won't shut up. like typically, like my Knotfest YouTube clips are typically 4 or 5 minutes. Like I asked Dez one thing, it was a 10.5-minute clip, and he like just went from here to here to here to here, and like in his answer. But yeah, love that guy. He was actually 20 minutes late to the interview, and I wanted to be mad at him because I'm like, 20 minutes, a couple of minutes is okay. 5 minutes, if the publicist hits you and say, hey, he's running a little bit late, blah, blah, blah. Right. 20 minutes is a lot.
Right.
Especially
when you've got scheduling, especially when you're scheduled and you need to take care of other stuff.
And I was like, man, this sucks. And I was kind of getting frustrated. And he pops on. And he was like, hey, man, I love your shirt and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, damn it, Dez. But,
yeah, I mean, like I said, with him especially, it's, I just think that them on there, I have a feeling that when they come on stage, they're going to have a huge reception.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's going to be really cool. I want to be there.
I don't know much about Placebo. Do you know much about Placebo?
So Placebo, I never worked with them. My first gig in the music industry was interning at a place called Formula PR, which was they did the PR for 9 Inch Nails and everything. And I know my boss, Sue Zimmerman, she loved Placebo. But they were like this like English alternative kind of band. Okay. I don't know if they had like electronica type stuff. To me, from what I recall, because it has been a long, long time since I've listened to them, I feel like they were poised to be kind of like a Muse type of band.
Okay.
Like the lead singer who wrote everything and kind of was like the mastermind behind it all and everything. And you just had and their fans were just always really, really hardcore. If you met Placebo fans, they'd be like, let me tell you about the gospel of Placebo, and you'd be like, oh, all right. Right. Like, you're really into this, huh? So they're one of those bands I've never seen live, but after, from that job, especially, it's an interesting addition also to this list.
Right. And the next band needs no introduction is Ministry.
Oh God, love that band. I'm so happy my buddy Caesar is playing guitar. I love watching him play guitar in a band that we both are. I'm like sitting there watching him, just like, I can't believe you're in this band. He's like playing. He's like, me too. I'm like, I can't. Right. But Ministry, I'll tell you a funny story about Ministry. First time I saw him was Lollapalooza '92.
Okay.
And I remember when they came on, it was dark outside, and it was like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, man. It was just like people were going kind of crazy. Everything was going nuts. I was watching my friend's backpack, which had like her binoculars and her camera and everything. So I didn't want to get in the pit or anything. And I started seeing the pit sort of like kind of becoming bigger. And I'm like, all right, I want to get away from here. And I realized the reason it was doing that was because there was a dude holding his neck like this, and he just had blood coming all down his body. Oh, and I was just like, who is this band? But their music sounded apocalyptic and insane, and it was just like it was the soundtrack to violence and warfare. And I had won one of those like promo pack kind of things, at the carnival games that they had back then, and Scarecrow from Psalm 69 was on that thing, and it just blew me away. And after that, I've been a diehard Ministry fan ever since. So that's one of those bands where I just can't wait. Anytime I can see Ministry is a good thing.
Yeah. I had never seen them until the final Slayer tour.
Oh.
And it was nice because the final Slayer tour, like everybody on that bill was kind of playing like the hits.
Right.
And Ministry, like that, I don't think they even played anything new. It was all just
everything was
stuff.
Everything was Psalm 69 before. So everything from Land of Rape and Honey all the way to Psalm 69. I don't even think they played anything off of like Filth Pig or anything like that. Like, I was just like, wow, they're 90s in it all the way.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And so it made for a great, because honestly, that's like my era of ministry is that stuff. So I was like, oh, I know this one. I know that one. I know this one. Thank you. You know, like,
yeah.
So yeah, it was a great set. And then I saw them again, Louder Than Life, interviewed Monty Pittman that day, things like that.
Oh, good old Monty. We love that guy.
Yeah, I've interviewed Monty a few times, man. It's just always cool to, be 1 degree away from Madonna. You know,
I love that he taught her the riff to Walk. That makes me laugh.
Right. Hey, I've had him, it's a new level, but yeah,
was it a new level? Oh, I thought it was Walk. Sorry.
Yeah, no, there's a great video of her playing that somewhere, but yeah, he told me that I asked him a long time ago that story, and then I asked it again, and he's like, "Didn't I already tell you this story?" And I'm like, "You did, but I want to hear it again." She Wants Revenge. Don't know much about them.
I saw them once live. Unfortunately, I thought they were very boring. So I hope that that's not the case now. You know, right. Whenever you have a band that's only 2 people, it can either be weird and bombastic where you're just like, holy crap, I can't believe 2 people are making this much noise. Like when I saw the White Stripes for the first time, I was like, how are 2 people doing this? But when I saw them, I was just like, it's just 2 people making, like, it was just 2 people and they just weren't exciting to watch or anything like that. Again, it was a long time ago. So I hope that it's different. I really, really do. But I mean, they have a couple of really, really great songs. But I mean, that's one of those bands where I'm sort of like, I can sort of take it or leave it. Like if it's like them versus Coal Chamber or something like that, like, yeah, okay, right. That's not even a thing. So, but if it's like, She Wants Revenge versus Prayers, then I might stick around for She Wants Revenge. Yeah,
it will be nice to see how the set times come out for this and how many bands are going to be overlapping and how they're going to try to, will they try to do like a KMFDM and a Sevin Dust at the same time? Like try to get bands that are kind of on each side of the fence,
right?
Kind of the same time,
rather the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
That's like when I saw Aftershock, they had Lamb of God and Guar at the same time, and I'm like, that's not okay. It's like,
honestly, I think that's what I think it was. It was like Guar and maybe Bring Me the Horizon at the same time.
Oh, really?
And I was just like, well, we actually watched Guar, but Papa Roach up next. Papa Roach is kind of another band that kind of weathered the storm. We're kind of the butt of the joke, and then now kind of are now being embraced again.
Yeah, I will tell you this, man. I have never been a Papa Roach fan ever, never, ever, ever. But at the same time, I will always admire their stick-to-itiveness. I will always admire the fact that they stuck with it, that they became successful. I will always admire all of that. Yeah. But I cannot listen to their music. It just doesn't work for me. I saw them for the first time at CBGB's playing a showcase. And I just remember being like, I don't know who this band is, but God, I got to leave.
I hope they don't get signed and get popular.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, man, I can't do this. And then when I saw them at Ozfest 01, I think it was. I was just like, yeah, this just doesn't work. But then, like I said, to see their success and everything, I'm never like one of those people like, oh man, they paid for their success or they just bought it or whatever. It's like, no, they toured, they did what they did, they muscled through it all and they came out on top, and that's admirable to me. I probably won't be around for their set, but I can sit there and be like, good on you guys. Way to go. Good job. But that's probably where it ends.
that was a band at the last Louder Than Life that I was like, check out a couple of songs. And then I was like, man, these guys are actually really good live. And, they played a few tracks off of the first album, kind of the, Broken Home and things like that actually kind of blew me away. Yeah.
Again, if any of my friends like them, I'm never like, fuck you. It's like, I'm just like, can we just not put it on while I'm around? Is that okay? If that's okay, then I'm good. But yeah, that's just one of those bands that just didn't click at all for me, unfortunately. But
yeah, and they somehow they weathered emo too. They almost slid into that too. Do you know much about Death Grips?
Not a clue. Not a clue about Death Grips. Yeah, that's and that's the cool thing about a show like this. And I know I've said this many times so far, but I really do hope I get to go to the show because I would love to check out some of these bands because they're for me. There's no better feeling in a way to go to a festival, see a band, and just be like, I need to find out everything I can about these guys. And I'll talk about that with a band that's coming up, but like that's why I'm hoping that a band like Death Grips or Prayers or Health or Machine Girl, hopefully if that's what it is, or Fiddlehead, I would love to be able to go there and be like, dude, this is my new thing. Like I'll buy a shirt or I'll buy a CD or I'll buy something. Like that's always a good feeling when a band just really just blows me away and I'm like, wow, dude, I'm so happy I'm here to see this. So good luck to those guys. I hope they do well.
Good luck with yourselves.
Good luck.
Billed as Flyleaf with Lacey Sturm.
I was wondering what that said underneath. Lacey Sturm. All right.
I mean, was Flyleaf big enough that when Lacey left or they kicked her out or whatever they did, they got a new singer that nobody knew that happened. And now that she's back with Flyleaf and doing these shows, like is that enough to where you need to put with Lacey Sturm in there?
And that's kind of the thing. It's like why the with it. It's like what is it, like Slash featuring whatever that guy's name is, like I'm always
Miles Kennedy.
Miles Kennedy, thank you. But it's like that seems unnecessary unless it's meant to bring those old fans back who are like, oh well, she's not in it anymore, forget it, I'm not gonna deal with them anymore. So maybe that is kind of a way to just kind of bring those old fans back to be like, hey, she's back, check it out.
Well, I did see that they played one of their first shows the other day, and like that made like the metal site news, like with her back in the band. So I mean, maybe I'm just like, I mean, I saw them in like 2006 on the Family Values tour. It was okay,
right?
It wasn't anything groundbreaking.
It was right up there with Kidney Thieves for me. Just that kind of a cool vibe, cool and dark and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, never a band that really, kind of punctured my consciousness, if you will.
Right. Up next to Mr. Bungle. Crazy that Mike Patton's kind of in this because of how much he kind of poo-pooed this whole scene for a long time. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I every time they play in LA, I'm either not around or tickets sell out like that. So I would love to see them again. Last time I literally saw them was, I think it was 99 on the California tour.
Nice.
But which was great, and I mean that record is amazing. I haven't given this new one a spin yet, and I should really put that on the old to-do list. But they're just great. I mean, and it's funny, like when I saw them last time, like he was like a orchestra conductor at the show. Like he was just like, then you and you do this and it was just, and it was wonderful to watch, just to see him orchestrating this and conducting the band to create this incredible music. So that's definitely a cool band, and another band that I think a lot of the bands are going to be there to see themselves.
I wonder if this is still going to be like the thrash version of the band, or if they're actually going to play like the debut record type stuff with
right.
Because the last time I saw them, actually they were the last show we saw pre-COVID. My wife and I flew to San Francisco in 2020. Yeah. So 2020 we flew to San Francisco when those reunion shows popped up.
Right. I remember that.
And went out there to see that. And then we're on the plane and people are starting to wear masks. And they're like, what's going on? Have you heard of this coronavirus? And they're like, it's just gonna pass. But
boy, were you wrong. Or at least
right?
at the time.
Up next, Evanescence, man. I was never a fan.
Me neither. My wife really likes them. But I saw them at Aftershock, and I have to say, man, I was pleasantly surprised. Her voice is incredible. She has an incredible set of pipes. Yeah. I was, and again, it's like, even when it's a band that I'm not a fan of, I love watching the audience's reaction to the band.
Oh yeah.
And especially when I get to see kind of like, when you see like these girls or you know, like these girls that were influenced by Amy, you know, and all that, it's to me, I like seeing stuff like that where I can go, okay, I'm not a fan of the band per se, and you're not going to catch me singing their songs or anything, but I love seeing the influence they've had on people. And I think that is such an important part of this entire festival, to be honest with you. You know, when you have your Killing Jokes and all these kinds of bands that really influence such a broad spectrum of music and fans, you know, when I look at Evanescence, I look at them on that level too, where, you know, it gave people a, you know, it introduced people to a certain thing. Now, the only thing that's a bit of a bummer in that regard is that Lacuna Coil was already doing that. Yeah. But they were on Century Media, so they didn't have this big label push. And I think if Lacuna had that big label push, I think Evanescence would have definitely been looked at as sort of a like, oh, yeah, they're a Lacuna Coil wannabe or whatever, you know. But that was the only bummer when you're like, dude, Lacuna Coil's been doing this for a long time, and then these guys come out, but they've got big record label money behind them, so of course they're going to have more radio and more play and, you know, bigger opportunities, and they took advantage of that and, you know, turned into what it turned into. So, you know, it is what it is, but yeah, I'm right there with you where I'm like, I'm not really a fan, but I like seeing the effect of their music on people. I think that's the best part.
Yeah, I had played bass for a girl named Lennon, and around this time she was on Arista Records. And
Lennon! I remember one of the Roadrunner bands toured with Lennon. Anyone? Yeah,
and then so when Evanescence came out, I was like, this is just what Lennon was doing, right? You know, and you know, she even kind of had she actually had our old singer from my pre-Primary 55 band was going to do a rappy part on one of her songs, but it didn't come together in the studio. But yeah, so that's what Evanescence was to me. Turnstile. This band is getting the push, dude. They are getting the push.
And their fans are nuts. However, I saw them at that Knotfest that we were at in Des Moines, and it blew me away.
They were great.
They had that glass jaw kind of vibe to them, but just there was something about them that I was like, this is one of those bands you gotta look at, you know, like, and then seeing how big it's gotten and everything like that. I'm like, yeah, that's one of those bands where I was like, I saw them, they blew me away, and I can understand why they're blowing everybody else away. And, you know, I mean, hopefully they are up. I mean, it is weird though, to see them on this list, you know, kind of like we were talking about with, like, you know, a band like, you know, Prayers being above, quote unquote, above, you know, Orgy or Monster Magnet, you know, Turnstile, like, kind of being above or like in front of, in a way, Papa Roach or Evanescence. It's kind of weird, but at the same time, I know this doesn't necessarily mean that this is the order of the bands that are going to be playing, you know, other than the headliners. But yeah, to see them at the kind of the close to the top of this bill is pretty impressive, I think, you know. And another band that's a real big buzz band. I think people are going to go batshit crazy during their show.
Another band that I interviewed Chevelle a couple of years ago, and it was funny. I was like, yeah, I'll have Chevelle on the show. Wasn't really thinking too much about it, but then you know, you do that thing where you go back and kind of give the discography a quick listen. You're like, damn, this is that's a hit, and that's a hit, and that's a hit, and that's a hit, and that's a great song. And you know, you're like, man, Chevelle is really good. And then, you know, I ended up interviewing Sam, the drummer, a couple of times, and my wife was helping me out at Louder Than Life, and it was funny because she likes a lot of the stuff, but for the most part, she could give a shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, when it comes to like famous people and things like that, she's like, doesn't really care. But she really got starstruck with the, you know, Sam from Chevelle. And I was just like, of all people, like,
really him? Like, okay.
I was like, of all people, the guy from Chevelle. She's like, I saw them back in the day, you know, I don't know why, but you know, I could just see her demeanor change. I thought it was fine. I was like, did you sleep with him? Like, I need to know something, you know, like,
right? You seem to like him a little too much right now.
But yeah, great band, man. I thoroughly enjoy them.
Yeah, Chevelle kind of fell into that cold Alien Ant Farm glut at that time.
Yeah.
So I never got into them. It just felt very generic at the time to me. But but same thing. It's like, that's the thing with the band, like, let's just say them or like Flaw or some of those bands where it's like, I feel like in a weird way, it was sort of not after my time, but like just towards the end of my time with that sort of thing. So, but people love them. Hey, can't argue that. If you love them, go for it.
Yeah, there definitely been many bands, and I'm sure you've had that too, where you're like, you don't really care too much for them, and then you interview them or meet them, and they were nice to you, and you're like, maybe they are pretty good.
Yeah, right.
They kind of fall into that category with me.
Yeah, you kind of see them live, and you're like, they're nice guys, and the music's pretty okay. All right, let's do this.
Are you a big fan of the Sisters of Mercy?
Not a huge fan. Again, just one of those influencer bands, that's been around forever.
Yeah.
I think they were before my time also.
Yeah.
So when I was really coming into music, my musical tastes were, skewed very heavy. So that's why when I started listening like Ministry and 9 Inch Nails and all that, like I knew a lot of those bands were really big into Sisters of Mercy. But I think it was a generation before me, so it's like, yeah, well, I never got into them. I would definitely be curious to see like what they have to bring to the table at this point, like, does it sound dated or does it sound cool?
I feel like this was the Jonathan Davis, like, we'll do it if you get the Sisters of Mercy.
Right.
Right. Kind of thing.
I could see that.
Up to the big four of this one, man. Obviously Korn on this, you definitely never go. If you're going to have a show like this, you have to have Korn.
Yep, for sure. I am surprised that there's no Limp Bizkit on here though. That is a little bit of I was a little like, of all the bands, I'm surprised that they didn't kind of make the list. But I mean, probably a scheduling thing, but still. But I mean, Korn, I mean, they're the ones who they broke open that they broke the door open, it's
right.
There's, I mean, it's, I always wonder with them, bands like them or System or even your Slipknots and stuff or, even like Nirvana to that degree, when you become almost a genre / culture defining part of pop culture, Metallica's Black Album, that kind of thing, like how, I don't know. I just always wonder, like, I mean, they've obviously been through their shit. We a lot of us know the stories and everything like that, but it's like, I that's always one of those things that I'm always curious about is just like almost like, what do you do? Like, what if you're, right. like when you can't go to the mall by yourself anymore, or you can't go to the grocery store or the post office, because you're just going to be swarmed or, and I'm sure those guys never saw that shit coming whatsoever, but, to have been, to still be here doing all of this, like, I just, to me, it's so magnanimous to see where they've gone. Like when I got that advanced cassette to just every part of the culture that's come and gone since then. And they're still doing it and still killing it. Even the last few times I saw them, I was just like that. Like, how do they still have such amazing shows? How do they still write amazing songs? Like you almost feel like at some point you just kind of lose what you were, what your initial inspirations were, but with Jonathan and those guys, like they just keep it going. And like, I don't know, man, that's just like, they are one of those bands where I'm just like, in a weird way, it's like, I'm happy that I was there to be a part of it in some way, shape or form,
Okay.
But I love seeing them live.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, man, they were like the first band that came out that was my band. That was. I saw them in a small club a few times on the first album tour. I got to see them open for Ozzy. I got to see them. So I saw them so many times when they first came out in little bitty clubs, and just to like watch them grow and grow and grow. And then, like I said, TRL and multi-platinum records and shit like that, man. It's crazy, and it's you feel weird being like, I'm proud of you. I'm saying you're like weird saying like I'm proud of you.
It sounds so trite. Like, who the fuck am I? But I'm proud of you guys. Like right. And they're like, thanks, but but you're right. You're right. That's really what it is. It's just to see a band come from this very, very humble. I mean, Bakersfield, I don't know if you've ever been to Bakersfield, but like,
I don't think I have. No,
that place is, not a whole lot of anything, so
right.
to come out of a place like that and be able to become what they became, it really is. In a weird way, it's almost like anytime you almost have those moments of doubt, it's kind of like you go, but Korn came from Bakersfield, it's like, where you're just like, if they can do this, then I've got to be able to pull something. I've got to be able to do something. I can make this work too, So I look at them as that kind of inspiration. Cause I remember when they were out, it was like, okay, they're on tour with 311. Okay. They're on tour with Ozzy. Okay. They're on tour with Sick of It All. I'm like, what? Oh, they're out with Manson and Danzig. What? They're out with Megadeth. It's like, it never made any sense because nobody knew what to do with them. And I think that was the real testament to them, is just like, they just never, you couldn't put them in a category whatsoever. And they've still remained in that way. You could be like, oh, they're new metal, but it's like, like that doesn't even qualify for them at this point. Like, you can't even be like, oh, Korn, you mean that new metal band? It's like, that's not how that works, dude. So I think that's kind of it. They became this metal genre defining band, and that's something that's I always hold in such high esteem and regard for.
Up next, Deftones.
The Deftones,
obviously one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
God, I love Deftones, and I love Deftones live. I love Deftones on CD. I love Deftones. Give it to me any way you can.
Yeah, my favorite thing is watching Abe play drums. We were watching them from the side of the stage at, I think it was Knotfest Ozfest, and just I every time I see them live, I'm like, I just can't keep my eyes off of him, because just watching him play drums is the best thing ever. And then just those, especially those first shows during Adrenaline, same thing. Like, I saw them in tiniest, the Saint in Asbury Park. A place holds like 40, 45 people, but just same thing to see them, go from Adrenaline to Around the Fur, and then just kick everyone in the face with White Pony. It was just like, it's you have the White Pony.
Oh, yeah, you do.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
Drop them away. So that's that. Yeah, I mean, with them, it's and same thing. They've become such a weird, like, kind of went into that kind of a weird Cure vein and kind of like this really weird stuff. But same thing, man. It's like, I can listen to Adrenaline all day long. I mean, Engine Number 9 will still throw me out of my chair when I'm working and make me thrash around my room for a while. Side note, one of the last times I saw Suicide Silence with Mitch, they covered Engine Number 9, and it literally looked like somebody threw a grenade in the mosh pit, because it was just people everywhere, just like flew in the air. It was so incredible. And that's kind of one of those things. It's like, you think of a band like Suicide Silence as, this kind of deathcore, whatever kind of band, and they're probably influenced by Deicide or Obituary or blah, blah, blah. And then it's like they bust out this Deftones cover, and you realize, like, what, this band has influenced on so many levels, so many people on so many levels.
Well, it's funny to talk about Suicide Silence. On a side note, me and a friend of mine who grew up listening to Korn and Deftones and all that together, but also loved Deicide and all that stuff too. We go to see Suicide Silence on one of their first tours, and we're like, this is just really heavy Korn. They had some groove element to them and stuff like that. And I interviewed Garza, at Louder Than Life, and we all we did was talk about new metal and how much he loved new metal, and and it was funny. Like, I even told him when I was in Primer, and he was like, oh shit, like he was stoked to talk to somebody in Primer, kind of
right.
But yeah, man, I love Deftones, man. We saw them last summer at the like a smaller amphitheater that holds like, I think 6,000-7,000 people, and it was sold out and outside, and just the vibe of that whole place. I was like, there are like so many like horny 40-year-olds right now. Like, it's insane, dude.
That's awesome. That's fucking hilarious.
But yeah, it was love that band.
Yeah, you're wearing it right now.
yeah. And obviously, I'm getting a sense that you don't like Incubus. I'm getting a
okay for Incubus. Anything up to Science, I'm all about. After Science, that's why it's like I heard what's his name, Brandon. He was like, I'm so embarrassed about Science and all these other older albums, and we were so dumb. And I'm sitting there like, dude, that record is everything for me. I saw them so many times on those tours, and A Fungus Among Us, and I mean, all that stuff was so incredible. And for him to be like, yeah, that was stupid. I'm like, oh man, you know. And then whenever I've seen them live a few times since then, and it's like they don't really play anything off of Science, you know, and it's just, and to me, I look at them a lot like I look at the Chili Peppers. I feel like they lost their fun, you know. Wow. And that's it's depressing to me. And I hope if I get to see the show that I go, oh fuck, I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, you know. Or oh my god, they played like 3 songs off of Science. That's awesome, you know. But the last few times, I'm just kind of like, oh man, like their stuff is so depressing and Pardon Me and all these kinds of. I'm like, man, just so I always hope that it's gonna be different each time. So that's what I'm putting into this, is that I hope they play some stuff off of Science, and I hope they don't diss it and all that. But I mean, like I read an interview recently with him where he was like, yeah, I'm embarrassed about that record. And I'm like, right. That record's like the best thing ever. So, but I mean, their inclusion on this list makes all the sense. I mean, they were on Immortal and all that during the whole Korn, Far, all those kinds of bands, that era, you know. So they definitely belong here. That is for sure. I won't take that away from them. But I do miss I miss Brandon and his dreadlocks.
Right. I think there's I think my view on Incubus has changed over the years. I was definitely in your camp for a long time, that like Science was like my favorite thing they did for the longest time, you know. And then, you know, the poppier stuff on Make Yourself came out. I was like, it's all right. And then obviously Morning View, and you get the, after that, I mean, I don't know much of Incubus after that, but over the last few years, it's another thing where, you know, we went to see Incubus, you know, in 2018 or 19, and they did the anniversary of Make Yourself, where they played it in its entirety. And I'm like, man, this is a really good record. And I, you know, interviewed Brandon last year. I just interviewed Kilmore a little while ago, and just kind of getting into it again, and just diving down those rabbit holes of Incubus. And then obviously my wife has like 4 favorite bands, and it's Deftones, Incubus, Tool, and Childish Gambino. Like that's it, you know. And so when you know, when we're playing music in the car, it's typically one of those 4 bands. And so I've definitely dove more into Incubus, the later Incubus, over the last few years.
Yeah, that's why when they did that that whole record in its entirety, I was like, oh my god, if they played all Science in its entirety, I would be right there. I'd buy the best tickets I possibly could. And then when he was like, yeah, that's an embarrassing record for me, I was just like, oh. Like I'll never see that. Right. I'll never see that show. That means I'll never get to see it. So we'll see what happens. So, and now,
System of a Down.
What can you say, man? Like this band just blew every preconceived notion of what metal is, could be, will be. It blew away everything. It was just. God, it was such a crazy record, and the fact that they're still doing it. I remember when they hated each other.
Is System of a Down currently at your house fighting?
Yes, they are fighting right now in my kitchen. We're trying to figure out who's going to wash dishes next.
You know, I will say that it is kind of crazy that they're the poster headliner. I don't know if I'm assuming they're the headliner of this whole thing. You know, you would assume Korn would be it, but man, it's just crazy how big System got. And you know, we've talked about that already on the show, that they're kind of one of those things where, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and they came back, and you know, they don't, like I said, they only do sporadic shows. They do hate each other, so getting them on the stage together to do this is probably, you know, like pulling teeth. But
right, unless they've reconciled, in which if they have, then that's awesome, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially out here in Los Angeles, you know, Glendale, in Los Angeles is just nothing but Armenians. So when these guys play, it's not just a concert; it's a cultural celebration for them, you know. And it is just, everybody is there. I remember when they put out, were they still on their first record or possibly Toxicity? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Toxicity actually. And they were supposed to play like on the roof of Best Buy in Burbank, and they expected 3,000 people, and 17,000 people showed up, and nobody knew what to do. Security was overwhelmed. Barricades were destroyed. It was a mess. It was so freaking crazy. It was just like free System of a Down show, and everybody showed up. It was a nightmare. But yeah, I remember. I mean, but that's kind of it. It's like when people that's why seeing a System of a Down show out here is a lot like seeing Pantera in Dallas. It's like when you really see, like when you see that hometown crowd, but it's not even the hometown crowd. It's this Armenian. It's like an Armenian pride parade kind of thing, and, and you just, and especially growing up in Jersey and whatnot, like we didn't have Armenians like there. That wasn't never a thing. Like, that's why when I moved out to LA, it's like System of a Down, Spine Shank. Like, I'm like, what? Armenians are everywhere. What is happening? But when you really see how tight knit that community is and how supportive they are, especially of them, because they are really like hometown heroes out here, it's a cultural celebration out here. I feel like if I saw them in New Jersey, like, yes, people would be into them and that'd be all great. But like when you see it out here, there's a different feeling altogether when it comes to them.
Yeah. They're a band that even when they say that, like, kind of back to your Brandon Boyd talk, where Serge talks about not liking the mesmerized, hypnotized stuff and wish they wouldn't have done it. And I'm like, dude, there's some killer tracks on those stuff, man. Stop, some of my favorite stuff's on those records.
Yeah, but I'm sure about at that time, just like what I was saying about Korn being this kind of genre-defying kind of thing, with System, it was very much, I think, the same, where they blew up to such a point where I think the pressure to put on to keep recreating yourself, just like Metallica with the Black Record. It's like, you just did the biggest thing in the world, 80 million records sold. You just totally changed pop culture. Now do that again, but better and bigger. It's like,
right.
And of course, at that point, you just have yes men all around you. You have groupies all around you. You have people whispering shit in your ear. You're better than them. They'd be nothing without you. It's like all of that stuff just starts to work their way in. So I'm sure when he's talking about that, I'm sure like that's probably a big part of it is like, but I was forced to write these. Like I couldn't write a record with just me being able to write a record. It's like, no, you have to have a record. You have to have this done. It has to be done by this date, and we have to release it on this date, and I think that's probably why a lot of that sort of stuff is really, kind of has maybe a little bit of a negative connotation for them. But still, it's like you said, it's like for so many people, those records mean everything, and that first record for me is just, I can listen to that and just be taken right back to 97. It's just like, oh my God, just that feeling that you got when you heard it. Like I still have the demo.
Yeah. I remember those tapes running around. System of a Down. You kind of said it in there, but they are definitely a sum of the parts band, because I haven't really cared too much for Serge solo. Yeah. Didn't really care for Scars on Broadway.
Yeah, me too.
Chavo's done some stuff I haven't really cared for. I still looking forward to the solo thing he's putting out. Get ready to give it a shot.
Right.
But put them all together and they get Toxicity.
It's light, but it's lightning in a bottle. That's really what it is. And especially on stage, if they're tight and they have it down, it really is. Yeah. It's like you really can close your eyes and just be like, it's 22 years ago. Like I can feel this right now.
The other thing about them too is I don't know if you play music or not, but I mean the riffs are not complicated. It's not complicated music. Yeah. It's crazy how simplistic System of a Down stuff is, but how it just like blows everybody away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I think of the name Sick New World, it's funny because in a weird way, it really should have been called When We Were Young Part 2.
Oh yeah, when we were younger.
Right, when we were. I mean, because same thing. It's like you say Sick New World, you think it's gonna be a bunch of new bands or whatever, but it's like when you have Sisters of Mercy on here and you have Ministry and Skinny Puppy and Killing Joke, it's like it's nothing new about this world, to be perfectly honest with you. But hey, it is what it is, man. But I think like When We Were Young Part 2, this would have, what a great way to kind kind of do a series of these festivals, like When We Were Young Part 3, and it's all, whatever, grunge or something like that, where you can just kind of keep doing that and still introducing new bands like Turnstile and all these kinds of bands to it. It's, I don't know. That's just me and my stupid opinions.
I think that when We Were Young Fest, like as it was about to happen, they actually announced when the next one with like Blink-182 and everybody on it. Right. I think Green Day's on the next one. So I'm assuming that we are close to this one now, but I'm assuming any minute now they will announce like next year's Sick New World with Limp Bizkit and whoever else and Slipknot. And not that we have any insider information on that part, but I'm just saying like there's enough bands I think that another one of these
that aren't on here that easily could just fill up an entire festival.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Primer 55 call.
It's coming, dude. It's coming. Sick New World Part 2.
Yeah, we're down the list somewhere. We'll be down there somewhere.
Primer 56. Let's make it happen.
Well, awesome, man. Well, this has been 2 hours. I did not expect this to happen, and I think your wife is ready to hit you with a big list.
It is a big list.
But yeah,
great, man.
We'll just end it with man, Sick New World, May 13th in Las Vegas. Make sure you guys go check it out. If you go check it out, let us know how it went. Yes. Ro and I will be doing these. These episodes will come out on Saturdays on Knotfest YouTube and on the on podcast form, things like that. So we'll be breaking down records and talking new metal. So this is gonna be a lot of fun, Ro. And
dude, I'm excited. This is a ton of fun, and I hope people stuck with it for the 2 hours. I know it definitely is long, and I can definitely be long-winded. But I mean, these bands, like for both of us, have just been they're just part of our history and a history that we share with so many other people. So I really want to hear other people's kind of some of their stories too, how they discovered Korn, or the event that led to them seeing the Deftones for the first time or whatever. All of our stories. My story is not unique. Your stories are not unique. Like, we all have our stories on how this all went down, and every one of our stories is important because it's all built up this culture that we are a part of right now and will always be a part of. So I'm stoked about this. I think this is a really cool thing.
Yeah, and I think this was the fun first episode too, is because we actually got to go through a list of bands and kind of see where each person's coming from. With you a little bit, maybe more of the industrial side into things like that. So we kind of know a little bit of where we're going, because I mean, there's a lot of times you'll listen into a podcast and you'll be like, all right, I think I like this co-host, or I like this host, and well, now he said, you start to really like kind of not go towards somebody, but you're like start to agree with somebody maybe a little bit more, and then all of a sudden they'll hit you with something you don't agree with, and you're like, I don't know who I like anymore.
Right.
So. Well, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, man.
I think so too, man. And I for anybody who is watching this, man, please let us know your thoughts, because I really want to hear / read other people's stories, because like I said, I mean, I got to see bands in Los Angeles and New York and New Jersey and all that sort of stuff, but there was people like you who were in the South, or somebody who's in Indianapolis who had their own experience, and I want to see those. I want to hear about those too.
Yeah, trading those war stories is always fun, man. Yeah. Like I got to see, Pantera, Machine Head, Cold Chamber, like that. That was a fantastic tour. But things like that. So those are going to be fun to come across, and we'll hit some records. We'll bring on guests, and definitely, man. If hit us up with your stories, we'll read those too. So,
for sure.
How you found new metal?
Yes, please do. This is awesome, dude. Thank you, Josh, man. I thank you for putting this whole thing together, man. You keep Talk to Me podcast is awesome. This is rad. The Knotfest podcast, all of it, man. It's just what brings this whole community together, man. So thank you for that. So, and thanks for having me on, for sure.
Oh, well, we're gonna have fun, man. So yeah, man. So thank you guys for checking out New Pod here on knotfest.com. And for that, I'm Joshua Toomey. That's Ro Kohli, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Yes, we will.